This week, FWUpd updates shim secure boot bypass. Brickstorm goes after a storage appliance, a Binwalk vulnerability, and Fable 5. Stay tuned. Below the surface, coming up next. Welcome to Below the Surface. This is episode number 76, being recorded on June 11th, 2026. I'm Paul Asadoorian, joined by Mr. Chase Snyder. Chase, welcome.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Vlad. Always stoked to be here.
Mr. Vlad Babkin is here with us. Vlad, welcome.
Hello.
Just a quick announcement. Of course, Below the Surface listeners can learn more about Eclipsium by visiting eclipsium.com/go. There you'll find the ultimate guide to supply chain security. An on-demand webinar I presented called Unraveling Digital Supply Chain Threats and Risk, a paper on the relationship between ransomware and the supply chain, and a customer case study with DigitalOcean. If you're interested in seeing our product in action, you can sign up for a demo. All that at eclipsium.com/go. We got some fun stuff to talk about this week, as always. Why don't we start with good old-fashioned AI? It's old-fashioned AI now because AI is everywhere. Every podcast is talking about AI, so we should start by talking about Claude Fable 5, Anthropic's most powerful public model with the most guardrails I've ever observed on a model. So much so I refuse to use it.
Dude, have you guys read The Three Body Problem?
Yeah, why does that sound so familiar?
I have seen the idea. I didn't read it in depth.
I don't want to do any spoilers, but there's a situation there where essentially, it's going to be a spoiler. Three Body spoilers, sorry, but people are referring to the Fable guardrails as the Sophon lock, which is basically a thing where aliens sabotage scientific progress so that humans can never develop effective tools and weapons to be a real competitor.
Wow.
And that, yeah, I don't know. There's so much like sociological commentary going on with Mythos and with Fable. But someone pointed out to me recently, I thought it was so funny, that the sort of release, the like messaging model for every AI product release has been back to like GPT-2 in 2019 has been, this is so dangerous, we don't even think we should release it to the public. And then it gets all this like hyperventilating hype about it, and then they release it. And it's like, yes, this does in fact affect my job. But it's not like, but you know, at some point, one of them is going to be actually genuinely dangerous, or maybe we're in the singularity already, and I just can't see the dark forest for the trees. But
yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the tool can be used for evil, therefore we should restrict access to the tool, because oftentimes there's other tools or other methods to achieve the same result. So what are you really preventing by restricting or banning tools?
I don't want to say anything, but if you look at history of OpenAI, there was a guy who pretty much pioneered this is too dangerous to be released. And at some point, that guy moved from OpenAI to Anthropic. And guess what? Anthropic now has the same new policy. It's too dangerous to be released. At the same time, we have OpenAI, who pretty much gives much easier access to their frontier models for cybersecurity. And like, yeah, I understand they're concerned with like nuclear weapons. Like some guardrails are meant to be in there, but not to the degree Fable was done in. Like, what are you doing? Like, are you trying to create a small elitist club that you pre-approved who can use it, and like everybody else just gets scraps? Like, to be honest, judging by how many comments I saw of like Fable just refusing to run, I didn't even test it yet. So
the same. I've heard so many negative things about it. I haven't even tested it. I'm still on Opus 4.8. Also, the fact that your output tokens are 2x what Opus 4.8 puts out kind of put me off to it as well.
Well, it also has, even if you have an enterprise account with them, they still retain the data. So any sort of like, don't there's no, with previous models, if you have an enterprise account, you have your contract with them, and it's like, we don't use your data for training, we don't retain your prompts that you type into it, and that has changed for Fable. I'll say that I did try it. I used it to create a visualization of a particular attack chain that was public on a blog post. It was something we've talked about on this podcast before, I think. It was a whole thing. So it's like no secret information, but it was a cybersecurity topic. And cybersecurity is one of the sort of no-go topics. And it downgraded me to
The
downgraded me to 4.8 while I was doing it, just because it was a cybersecurity topic. I was like, there's nothing in here that's not already just on the internet. It's in the corpus. There's no research question. I wasn't like, figure out how to do anything with this. I was just like, visualize this. Here's an attack chain described in text. Make it in pictures. And it downgraded me. So it seems like really a hair trigger for the cybersecurity topic to downgrade you on the model, which I don't, Opus 4.8 is fine. I'll use half the tokens. It does a fine job. But the amount of like backlash that they're getting for it on Twitter really is enormous.
Ironically, I prompted Claude I like Sonnet 4.6 for general research, because it uses a lot less tokens, and doesn't cost as much. So when I did that, that's how I generated some of the show notes. I need to make like a skill or like artifact, whatever they call it, for that.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta do that. But these notes say an immunologist reported the word cancer as being flagged as a biosecurity risk. Like, just to go show you how off the rails the guardrails are in Fable 5.
It's just like, what are you doing? Like, sure, I understand they're concerned with the risk. Like, there is no question about that one. But what, do we want to ban all of the research, including defensive one? I understand that it's incredibly hard to write a classifier for this. Sure. But like at this point, it's not even usable for defensive purposes. And like, how are you planning for enterprises to defend against this stuff? At the same time, we have in the news, it's not like I'm making this up. Some random guys, when Mesos just released, actually broke access for it and had it, even though Anthropic never approved them. So there is a non-zero chance that a government-level threat actor right now is using Mesos because he's like somehow sneaked into one of the approved organizations to maybe stage their attacks. Like, we don't know. And the point is, Anthropic, like, they cannot really review every single prompt every single user makes. So, like, the chance that some threat actor is already using Mesos for evil, while you cannot even use it to defend yourself, is not zero. And like, who are Anthropic to actually decide what is permitted use? Like, there is a lot of stuff which is like fringe use cases, like vulnerability research. Who can tell us if this is a good thing to use it for vulnerability research or a bad thing? It's like both things happen. And like, when the cyber verification program, I was thinking that, okay, they're doing a reasonable route. But with the route they took with Mesos and just blocking access to everybody, yeah, that's not going how it should. Like, they're gonna lose the following, or maybe whenever a competitor comes up with this level of model, like let's say OpenAI, and just releases to the public more freely, they will just lose a lot of their following immediately.
Right.
Here's another perspective I've been sort of noodling on from this too, is that, so when they first announced Mythos, Anthropic also announced Project Glasswing, which was a project where 40 companies got early access to Mythos to use it for cybersecurity research on their products to find vulnerabilities that they could then patch. And a bunch of companies, notably Mozilla, said that they found 270 or something vulnerabilities in Firefox that they patched. Meanwhile, Microsoft, using their own AI vulnerability, discovery,
something.
Yeah, they have their own thing, and they said, "Oh, we're on track to break our record for patches issued on Patch Tuesday because of AI vulnerability discovery." And so they're rolling out patches more and more. Meanwhile, so more and more vulnerabilities are getting disclosed and patched by the vendor, but the pace at which companies that use products are able to roll out those patches is slowing way down. In the Verizon data breach investigation report that came out a week or two ago, so the most recent one, they indicated that among the breaches they look at, which is like 20,000 plus breaches, the organizations that were affected had gotten way slower at rolling out patches for even known exploited vulnerabilities. So it's like the median time to patch went up from 30 something days to 40 something days. And the number of patches that ever get patched, the number of vulnerabilities, known exploited vulnerabilities that ever get patched, the percentage of them went down significantly. And so it's like, okay, the number of vulnerabilities being disclosed is going up. The number getting patched or the percentage of them getting patched is going down. It's also getting slower. So this is actually like creating new attack surface at a pretty alarming rate, directly attributable to these AI vulnerability discovery
I think this is
tools.
directly correlated. I'm glad you brought this up. Directly correlated to operational risk versus non-operational risk,
Sure.
because searching for vulnerabilities, finding vulnerabilities, even developing a patch for vulnerabilities carries with it zero operational risk. You can do that outside of any operational thing, and it can just be independent research. You can throw all the money and models at it that you want. You can let it churn. It can make mistakes. It can create false positives, and you're going to sort that all out until you create the patch. Now, it's still like pretty much zero operational risk to develop a patch and distribute a patch. The operational risk comes down when you have to apply that patch. That carries with it a ton of operational risk that you can't AI yourself out of. I mean, I hope we get better technology to help us with this problem, but you can't really AI yourself out of it, because at some point you have to apply that patch, cross your fingers, and hope for the best. Because every patch that's released, there is always a person who is going to apply that patch first and recognize whether that's going to go well for them or not.
Yep. And like, moreover, once the vulnerability gets discovered by Mythos, and like, okay, let's say patches come out, like, okay, Firefox is fully open source. Any attacker worth the salt, like,
Yep.
let's say, I would be a government level threat actor. What I would be doing is literally cloning a Firefox version daily, diffing, and then passing it through a simpler model,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, I would be finding all of the same vulnerabilities Mythos found, but just at a fraction of the cost.
Right.
And like, now you are not patching, you cannot even like scan your own products for this, but others suddenly have like some kind of level of access to this stuff. And like, setting up this pipeline is not trivial. Like, sure, you can do this, but like, will a medium-sized company do this? No, because that's cost resources. You need people who are proficient with this level of stuff. And like, only a handful of companies even have those out of like regular ones, not cybersecurity focused.
Yeah.
And
And I
yeah,
think
this situation is not very fun to be in.
I think AI has so I've used certain models to help me determine if I'm applying updates to my Linux system, if it's going to go well or not. And I probably need to turn this into an app that collects information about your hardware and software, right? And this is as simple in Linux as running the inxi command, right? INXI, inxi is a great utility. I've used it in my cheat sheets that I've published on Eclipsium's website. I think there's a GitHub repo where I have a script that'll run it for you on my personal GitHub. Um, and basically, it collects all the information about your system. So your hardware, what graphics card you have, what CPU that you have, what drivers, what kernel, what Linux distro, what version of everything it's at. And you give that to an LLM and you go, like in the case of Manjaro, here's the stable update forum post where they've released a new version of Manjaro. And in that post, they have details like stuff you got to do before the update, stuff you got to do after the update. And then there's a bunch of posts from users who have applied the update and are describing their experiences with it. And so you can't be the first one to apply an update because you need this data, right? You need people to actually test it. Then until the LM go to that post, collect all that data, cross-reference it with what's on my system. Should I apply this update? And if I do, what do I have to do before? And what do I have to do after to make sure I'm mitigating my operational risk? Now, that works pretty well if a couple of things are true. One, it's one system for one user, right? Works great. Also, you need other people to apply the patches or fixes and report on the outcomes of it, right? And once you have that data, LLMs are great at helping you. I mean, I've had LLMs tell me, do not go to that kernel version because you have this graphics card in that configuration, and there is a bug that hasn't been fixed, and that'll be in the next kernel version, so you should wait. And that's normally what I would do research manually. Now an LLM is I think is great at doing that for me and in helping me mitigate that operational risk. If you could, yeah, it's a great company idea. If you could operationalize that and scale that with an LLM, that would be a great thing. I'm sure the companies that are doing patch management are already looking at that. I'm sure Vlad's gears are churning on how we can integrate that into our own product, right? They can help you apply firmware updates. Um, and I think that's a great approach. But again, I've only tested it on like an individual basis. I'm curious to see if we could get that to scale.
Yeah, and like scaling something like this is incredibly hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many things can go wrong with like updates of firmware. Like it's
Right.
not even a
Even just
joke.
firmware. Yeah. That's my idea for that. And speaking of firmware, Binwalk has a path traversal vulnerability. I'm always keen to point out when the tools that we use as security researchers have vulnerabilities, because I'm super conscious, like I don't want to get owned. And especially with like Claude Code running even in a VM, I'm telling Claude Code to go get tools, right? Going and telling it, go put on this GitHub. I installed this tool to go use this tool. And so we still rely heavily on tools, especially, Vlad, when you're looking at reverse engineering firmware, you need a set of tools to
Yeah,
do that,
you
to do
cannot
the
you cannot
extraction, to
you
do
cannot do everything from scratch every single time.
correct. And Binwalk is what has been one of the most popular tools over the years to um, unpack firmware, right? It's probably its best
Yeah.
use case. And this vulnerability arises from Windows CE firmware binaries are when they are extracting those, there is a condition where it allows for a directory traversal. So if you packed up a Windows CE firmware, you could put artifacts in there that would traverse the file system and lead to remote code execution on the analyst system, which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
wild. The
Yep.
full write-up I'll put in the show notes. But that's a neat find. I wonder if they used AI to find the vulnerability. I don't think they said in the article. I did read the article. What led me to this target? This does have a CVE 2026-7179. I wonder if this is this is the Python version of Binwalk, not the Rust version. Not that Rust necessarily prevents path traversal. Isn't Rust more about memory safety, Vlad?
So Rust is about memory safety. I don't think Rust prevents any high-level wounds.
Mm.
Like, for example, like if you put a skill injection in there, Rust is not gonna help you with anything because like it's not focused on this. Don't expect like a magical tool to solve all of your security problems with just a flick of your fingers. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and
Like
he's
security
got
that you
proof of
acquire this way,
concept.
you lose this way as well.
And they've published a full proof of concept for this vulnerability as well. It's on there. It's in GitHub, all available.
Mhm.
So make sure you update your Binwalk.
Yeah. Or don't. It's very fun.
It's fun just to
You
see
know, you
what
never,
happens.
yeah, you never know what you can catch this way. You know, it's like training your computer's immune system. Install a small virus for it to be like more resistant to big ones.
Um, an update on. Did you guys want have a preference what we talk about next? Sorry, I'm just kind of going in order.
So I would say the interesting one is the firmware updater thingy, FEIPD.
Some people, I say FWUpd. Some people say FWUpd, which I kind of like. I think it's kind of neat to like actually pronounce the acronym.
I'm just gonna skip the W and be like, I'm gonna F you up, D.
That's right. Hey, what up, D? So this is interesting. There's a situation that arises, and I couldn't really fully unpack what they're doing because I couldn't get past the fact that your DBX is signed by your key exchange key, and FWUpd in some cases of secure boot to preserve the boot integrity will update your DB with appropriate records so that your system still boots. And I was trying to unpack exactly what FWFD was doing and how they were signing it, but apparently I think what's happening is they have multiple capsule updates, like new and old capsule updates that contain the correct signed DB, and they're kind of flip-flopping between them. Because it would have to be signed by your key exchange key, unless you're doing a mock or machine owner key kind of thing on a Linux system. On Windows systems, right? It all has to be signed. It's the whole point of secure boot. You can't just allow anyone to go add entries into your DB because then attackers could just boot, use any software they wanted. So it has to be protected by the root of trust. So it's following the root of trust, but in certain cases, especially secure boot, FWUpd is modifying the DB, which kind of weirds me out a little bit. But as long as it's preserving the root of trust, I think it's okay.
So yeah.
I don't know if you looked
In
into
this
this one,
case,
Vlad.
yeah, in this case, like honestly, like all of these updates sound like a very, very risky thing to me. Like,
Okay, so I'm not the only one. When I read it, I thought
yeah.
the same thing, Vlad. Yeah.
Like one thing is like if there is some way, okay, you have one certificate, let's say the second one, and now you have two of them. If it would be this simple, maybe yes, and it is actually safe, and I wouldn't have like angry butterflies in my stomach when I would be using the update tool, right? But if what they're doing is actually removing the old certificate as well, now we have a surprise. And like
Right.
second issue is like systems which are set up to use their own signing keys, like uh, which can get very, very iffy, especially if FEIPD does not have access to the key, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can mess the system up really, really badly, especially if it just removes your own key. Suddenly the system will stop booting.
Yeah, I
And
get
like,
super weirded out when we talk about updating your keys or key stores in secure boot. That because like you're saying, Vlad, it could lead to a system not booting pretty quickly if you start messing
yep,
with that stuff.
yep. And also another question in my brain, what about people who want to get rid of Microsoft certificate and want to completely manage their own key? What
Mm.
would they do if this thing actually messes their setup? It can be a nasty surprise. Like I
Well,
can
hopefully there's
imagine
logic in
like
there to only use the public, do this with the public certificates, if you will, not your
hopefully
own. Yeah.
hopefully, because like if they messed it up, then there will be a pretty nasty surprise with this.
Yeah.
Like I would be very, very careful about this thing. Like I don't even know like if you should deploy something like this at enterprise scale so easily. Like maybe if your enterprise actually has like 1,000 copies of the same laptop and you can actually test it on one, maybe then you can use it. But companies like for example Eclipsium doing cybersecurity research, well, researchers have weird setups on their laptops by design. Even if they have the same laptop, all of them, each one will have some kind of special setup for their specific function. And
Mm-hmm.
like maybe it is web research, in which case you don't really need a lot of like secure boot stuff. But what if you are a researcher who does low level stuff? Well, then you might have to use outdated drivers, and you might have to use like some like weird things that you are now analyzing need some kind of weird compatibility mode in the CPU for you to run it locally. And now surprises start. So like it's very, very questionable thing.
Yeah, I'm sure maybe we're missing something here too. I'm sure Richard Hughes, who's been a guest on the show before, could explain exactly what he's done.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to bring Richard back,
Yeah.
get an update on the project. Because Rich, he's a sharp dude and he knows all this stuff inside and out and
Mm-hmm.
backwards. So
Yep. Like UEFI has been a good tool. So I'm not saying that they did anything wrong. I'm just pointing out everything that can go wrong.
yes,
Like it's not that any of this is wrongly implemented in the tool. I have not checked the update, just to be clear. But like, yeah, there is a lot of like weird questions to this that can and probably should be asked.
This
well,
is a
and
really
it's
good.
one of the things with secure boot that has plagued us over time is the complexity of it all, right?
Yeah.
Maintaining a root of trust in the context of secure boot, traditionally it can be very difficult in certain circumstances, right? And it gets more complex over time the more certificates expire and you need to issue new certificates, the more
Yep.
DB and DBX entries have to be issued, right? There's finite space with those.
Yep.
Entries are, multiple hashes are replaced with certificates inside of the DB and the DBX to conserve size. And so building detections on that is hard because you want to say, oh, well, if hashes go missing from the DBX, that could be suspicious, except it's normal behavior. If you're adding a certificate into the DBX that has signed a whole bunch of software, you don't need those hashes anymore. So there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
nuances with secure boot that uh, operationally make it somewhat risky, which is why I think you'd find a lot of organizations have systems in a not great secure boot state. Like on or off is a state, but even on doesn't necessarily mean that secure boot is doing
Yep.
everything it can to protect your system.
Yep, and we have seen devices shipping in like manufacturer mode in secure boot, which is like secure boot is technically enabled, but also it's useless, right? I have
Right.
seen one device like myself, one of my laptops had that, and like it was a finding by our product, by the way. So
Yep.
like we actually did some, I believe it's called dog food. So like yeah, like we actually ran it on like personal machines as well, and like
Yeah, I
sometimes
did
you
the
find
same.
really tasty stuff.
When I joined, I ran it on one of my servers and manufacturing mode was enabled. Yeah. It's
Yep,
interesting.
and this was flagged only thanks to like me actually using Eclipsium. Like,
Yeah. I don't think you
shameless
find that much
spill,
anymore
but
though.
like,
The manufacturing mode thing I think has largely been aged out. I don't think we see it as much as we used to,
yeah, yeah, it's like,
which is good.
thankfully it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's good thing. Like, I don't want that thing. I mean, maybe I do, but if you're evil,
Right.
so,
Sorry,
but
Chase, were you going to
if
say
you,
something earlier?
yeah,
Oh,
you
nothing of note. Just that this
interrupted
is a
me.
good episode for us to refer back to the canonical XKCD comic, where all of modern computer infrastructure is relying on one tiny little open source project being thanklessly maintained by some guy in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Numerous such cases in today's show docket alone of some little project that is just like critical path for so much of software and engineers and developers and security researchers. That's just like, by the way, this is just like one person's brainchild that they continue to maintain. You're welcome.
Well, I mean, one could say it's a similar case, Chase, to what you're talking about in US CERT's vulnerability note 616257. Microsoft signed UEFI shim bootloaders vulnerable to secure boot bypass. So shim is the piece of software that gets signed by the Microsoft certificate that allows Linux operating systems to do secure boot. So rather than Microsoft signing every different version of mostly grub or systemd bootloaders that all the hundreds of Linux distributions are using, they're like, oh, we'll just sign shim, and then shim will take care of validating the rest of the chain. And that, Well, it's not great. No one in the Linux community was happy about this, I don't think. It's not great. Um, and so what happened was multiple bootloaders, shim loaders, had vulnerabilities, got signed, or vulnerabilities were discovered, and a bunch of vendors had forked different versions of shim, gotten them signed, and never fixed the vulnerabilities. I believe is the
Oof.
chain that happened. There was a great quote in here. One of our coworkers, Stas, pointed it out. And I'm gonna have to find it. Oh, so over time, multiple security vulnerabilities were identified and corrected in the upstream shim project. However, a number of vendors had previously forked or customized older versions of shim for their own products and boot environments. In many cases, these vendor-specific bootloaders were not updated after vulnerabilities in the upstream project became publicly known. As a result, vulnerable bootloaders remained signed and trusted by Secure Boot because they had not been revoked through the Microsoft signed DBX revocation list. And there you
Dude,
have it.
we talk
That's
about,
fun.
yeah, we talk about yeah, I mean, software supply chain security heavily rotates on talking about open source components.
Yep.
And we've talked about there was a particular network device vendor that we did some analysis on and found that over the last 6 years or so, it went from having no open source dependencies built into it to like over 100. And it's like with all of the npm and python, marketplace supply chain attacks, it's like that stuff could be in your network boxes. We talk about like the non-transparency of Mythos, right? Where it's like they don't want you to, there's certain things that they won't let you do. And there's an analogy there to be made, I feel, for the way that network device vendors don't let you see inside the guts of the box. And so you would have no way of
Yep.
knowing there's a vulnerable open source component that they forked and never updated, or just even if they're up to date, there's constant vulnerability and supply chain attacks in those things. And so when it's like hidden away inside of these devices that are obscured from you by the vendor that they're just
Yep.
forcing trust. It's
Yep. Like modern network devices supply chain and like their obscurity and like we're not gonna let you see the shell because it's gonna harm device stability is nonsense.
yeah,
Like
because it's too risky, which is the exact same message. Like, we
yeah.
can't release this, we can't let you do this, it's too risky.
Yeah, risky
And
for whom? For them about you finding out how bad their products are?
mhm.
Maybe. But like the point is, like if your product is owned every single week and you don't solve visibility problem, what are you doing as a cybersecurity vendor? And by the way, what are you doing buying from such a vendor? Like, come on, they have a weekly vulnerability, more or less. And like, there are a few vendors like this. No, not calling any names out, but like, questions got to be asked for this to actually improve. And the improvement would be, let's give at least visibility into products to whomever asking for them.
I think Microsoft should publish an attestation API based on just the Microsoft UEFI CA 2011 cert. That's the one that signs third-party bootloaders. Well, it used to, right? They kind of shifted around in the newer certs, but you take the old cert as an example. That certificate was used to sign an unknown amount of unknown software. Like there's no list of everything Microsoft signed with that certificate. And so, like, props to ESET for actually finding this software, determining that it's vulnerable, and reporting on it. What I would like to see is Microsoft publish an attestation API that's like, hey, here's all the software that we signed with this certificate. Now it'll get dicey if it's commercial software, but I also want a URL where I can go download that software, right? It should publish the hashes for it. It should publish a link to download it. Then as researchers, we would know that any piece of software that we can pull from the attestation API has to be free of vulnerabilities or it needs to be revoked. So it would kind of like be almost, I mean, they could have a bug bounty program for it too. Like, how awesome would that be? Because this
Yeah.
software has to maintain the integrity of the root of trust. And right now, that's shrouded in secrecy, which, as we all know, is not the right way to implement
Yeah,
security.
it's
It should be
security
it
through
should be
obscurity.
open, and it should be open for public scrutiny, much like
It's
cryptographic algorithms. No.
security through obscurity never worked. Never
Hmm.
ever worked. Like everybody who tried to make security through obscurity eventually failed somewhere. And like that's a universal rule, more or less. Like
Could,
you
because more
don't
than
get.
once in history we've found UEFI shells. Mickey and myself have found a couple in history. The most recent one was the framework disclosure, which is on our blog. Who framework has fixed everything, but there were signed UEFI shells that contained functionality to bypass secure boot via the memory mapping.
Mhm.
And I'm confident there's more. We just don't know all the UEFI shells that exist that have been signed to work with secure boot. If we had an API and we could go query that, then we could scrutinize that software for configuration and for vulnerabilities. But
Yep.
we can't. We gotta get lucky. We gotta find it on a system and go, oh, that's a UEFI shell I haven't seen before. What happens if I see if it's signed by secure boot, and if it has, there's like two different ways, capabilities in a UEFI shell, that if it's in there, you can use those as an attacker to bypass secure boot.
Yep. And like this is a whole show. And like some software like has to be like maybe not open source, but at the very least public.
Right.
And sadly we don't have this. Like, and I don't mean a specific vendor. We don't have this as an industry, which is much more sad thing to say.
Yep.
Like we just don't. That's it. So there is nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. It's except, it's kind of like finding a needle in a stack of needles, right? We don't even, in this case, we don't even know where the stack of needles is. Right?
Yeah, we
We
don't
don't
even know
know this.
what the
How do you know the
needle is.
software exists if it's not published anywhere? You get it as part of some operating system or IoT device or whatever, right? But if I don't have that device or that system, I can't
Yep.
analyze that software. I can't acquire every device on the planet and go look at its bootloader and see if boot process and see if it has a
Yep.
UEFI shell.
Yep.
We're gonna
And
try.
like the
We're
stupid
trying.
part is, and
We
the
tried.
stupid part is somebody who has this device and like put their effort in, they have this software. And
Right.
like this is a much more scary thing because now attackers have a asymmetric advantage. You cannot easily copy this capability. Like
Yeah,
you
when
can
they get
try
on
to
a
purchase.
system, it's a potential attack path once an attacker lands on the system, that defenders are at a huge disadvantage about knowing if that is even an attack path or not.
Yeah, like you just don't know, and you cannot know with like how we architect modern systems.
Right. Unless you give us the binary, then we can tell you. Or we can tell you how
Yeah.
to find it in the binary. Actually, I think my framework post shows you how to find it in the binary. At least gives you some hints on that. I don't think I released all
I
my tooling.
mean, it
I did write
might
some Python
help.
scripts, I think, to analyze it, but you could very easily, especially with an LLM today, take public sources, take some UEFI shell. Like I think that's pretty much what I did, right? Just to have some kind of test system
Mhm.
to analyze the shells, to see what was inside of them.
Yeah, there is stuff you can do, but you don't want this to be done manually. Like if you are
Right.
an enterprise or even if you're a customer, you don't really want to dig into every single device you own. Like you
Right.
want
And
some
start
automation
reverse
around this.
engineering every single UEFI
Like
shell in your,
like
your
i- 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 i-
200,000
i-
workstation fleet. Yeah.
yeah, even if as a private customer, like you might have more than one computer. Like I have like three of them,
Right.
right? Now what? Do I analyze every single UEFI binary I have in them? And then what do I do? Do I go for network devices firmware as well? How am I sure that my analysis is actually good? Like I really want just a list of software,
Yep.
realistically, but I'm
Now,
not getting them.
Microsoft will will be adding the affected bootloaders to the Microsoft official DBX revocation list. as part of coordinated disclosure, and they do list the hashes of all of the bootloaders that are there.
Yeah, but now this means that you need to have updated DBX,
Right.
which
We're back to that.
quite a lot of people do not.
Correct.
Surprise.
I think it's historically one of the biggest findings in our product, right? Is outdated DBX. Very common.
And it's very common and very
What's the
popular.
answer? How should people deal with that? Like, what do you do if why aren't they doing it? Is it just not seen as a big enough risk and that's going to change over time? Or is it
That's
some sort of
one
operational friction or just not enough bandwidth, too many priorities?
that's one part of it. Like it's an operational risk. If you update your DBX and suddenly your software stops booting, well, you just locked yourself into a corner. Congratulations. But like at the same time, it's not just that. It's also like operationally hard. Like if you have one device, you can find everything you need to update DBX on it. Okay, sure. Now do this for a fleet of devices, especially if every single device is different.
Mm-hmm.
And then also do this on a fleet of devices which each has its own settings. Now that gets even more fun. And it
Yeah,
just
and
like brings repeat.
so this confirms my suspicion. My question was, and I think I knew the answer. Does the UEFI DBX always get updated, even we'll just talk about Windows 11 systems, via Windows Update? And the answer is no, it does not always get updated reliably on Windows 11. And I forget all the details as to why, but it doesn't. That was my impression. So, Chase, to answer your question is it requires some like manual intervention
Mm.
from IT and IT security teams to push out a DBX update, which, as we described, is
Risky.
can be a very risky or dangerous process.
Yeah.
Because it has to be that update has to have a check built in. And FWFD actually built this in for Linux systems. Take the hash or signing process for your current bootloader and make sure it's not in the DBX update you're about to apply. Because if it is, then your system's not going to boot if secure boot's enabled. And so
Yup.
the
And
right
like
update process is to check that chain.
yeah, and so the right update process is also to check if you are currently using anything in that DBX, which is also like very system OS dependent. Like even if
Mm,
you wanted to check all of that, you would be really hard pressed to do something like this.
yep.
And it's not because like IT uncooperative and just I don't know, scaredy cats or something. It's just really hard problem. It's not like even if I would be solving this like like to be honest, solving such an update is a bold product of its own.
Yep.
Right? Like we like in Eclipse we have this for certain devices, but not for all of them because like
Mm-hmm.
again it's really hard to maintain something like this. So like without help from vendors, we are basically doomed.
Yep.
So you're saying nobody's going to vibe code a solution to this problem overnight with Fable 5.
Very unlikely. Like
Very unlikely.
it's not even a moat. Like it's an actual hard problem. Like you have to have so much data collected for this and analyzed and properly categorized that like even an attempt to wipe code this and use AI will heavily rely on you getting all of this data. And
Yeah.
vendors don't easily make it available. Thank you guys
Right.
for locking all of the firmware updates behind the contract. Like at the very least, give us updates to analyze and lock it in the software.
Yeah.
Because
It's
like
hard to know
this is
even
doing
what's in
community
an update.
disservice.
You're right. It's hard to know what's even in an update.
Yeah, and like then some vendors do another disservice to the whole community. Let's encrypt our updates. It's gonna make them so much more secure if
Yeah.
nobody can look into them. I cannot
Oh.
even I don't know. Somebody should create a evil vendor voice for this when like they don't intend to be evil but actually are.
Don't get me
Because like
started on don't get me started on vulnerability data. You both know how I feel about that recently,
yes,
and what a hot
I
mess
do.
that is.
It's just a hot mess.
But it's even we're talking about a very hard problem to know how to safely
Yeah,
apply a DBX update. It's one thing, but if we back up, it's difficult to determine when a vulnerability arises, what products and versions are affected by that vulnerability. That's also a super hard problem. That's usually shrouded in mystery behind a vendor advisory, right? Or they try and put it in the CPE data. We had that conversation earlier, Vlad, right? Not all vendors are filling out the CPE data. We struggle with the CPE format. So like, how do we do patch and vulnerability management if we don't have a good basis for the fundamental data that we're applying?
Yep.
And then relying on version falls down, right? I go back to my recent Arista example, which, by the way, was added to the CISA KEV this week. And that was one where, yes, certain versions of Arista products are vulnerable. And this isn't Arista's fault, by the way. I'm not picking on Arista in any way, but because this is a situation that arises and is more of a problem we haven't solved with the right data and processes. Both in vendor land, they make it really hard. And as an enterprise defender, it's super hard. So Arista issues that vulnerability, the vendor advisory, and they go, this is exploited in the wild. These versions are vulnerable, but it's only vulnerable if you've got this component enabled and it's configured this way. And by the way, if it's configured in this different way, it's not vulnerable. And by the way, it's not just for like one component, it's for a bunch of encapsulating protocol support on that device. So if you look at the Arista advisory, there's like tons and tons of configuration examples. So you have to do really hard work to figure out if that device is actually vulnerable, to know that you have that in your environment. Yeah, I may have Arista EOS in my environment, but is it the right version? Does it have those things enabled? Are they configured insecurely or are they configured securely? Like, that's an investigation that has to happen. And oh, by the way, now on top of it all, threat actors are actively exploiting this vulnerability. So your requirement to know if you have it in your environment and it's vulnerable, we just shined a big spotlight on that. Like, you need to know this if you've got Arista products. So maintaining an accurate asset database and all that stuff is important, but relying just on version isn't enough. We need deeper intelligence into especially our hardware virtual appliances in order to determine, not even if they're compromised, that's a different thing, just to determine if there's a vulnerability that we need to address in them.
And it gets more and more fun with every single step, right? So like, the industry is just going nuts with like AI detected stuff, and not only that. So AI is not like, AI is just accelerating everything by a lot, and like, it's not always a good thing. Like, attackers have a much easier time with all of this than defenders are.
Yeah, agree. I think what we're saying is AI is helping attackers more than it's helping defenders potentially.
Yep. Not
because we were talking about it
potential,
last night
actual.
too, like the SOC using AI to find events. That's great. It's a great use case for that. But where it falls down is, how do we fix the things? Like, the SOC is looking for security events, not and maybe vulnerabilities, but where the rubber meets the road to mitigate that vulnerability, you've got to find it and fix it. And I don't see the AI technologies helping us get better at fixing it. And good Lord, if someone is out there and has this technology or has done it, like, I want to talk to you, because I think that's awesome. Because I've struggled in my career, myself, and guiding people on how to apply patches. It's hard. If there's been like technology out there that is helping us, that's using AI, I want to know about it.
I will actually that's this. A number is on social media. Didn't have a chance to check it. Didn't research it. So like, take it at face value. But some guy actually took a look at published Mesos related vulnerabilities, and their, how do you put it? And like, their patched vulnerabilities. Found vulnerabilities was at 1,596. Guess how many of them were actually patched with Mesos?
patched by Mythos?
Yeah, patched by the AI that found them.
Like maybe half?
No, 97.
Wow.
So like AI has a whole problem with patching things, and it's not easily fixable.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying even though AI can find vulnerabilities, it's still struggling
Yeah.
coming up with a valid patch for that vulnerability.
Yup. Yup.
Because
Yup.
that's the harder
And
part, right? It's almost easier to
that's
find a
the
vulnerability
much
than it is to
harder
patch
part.
it. Yeah, and
And
patch it
like
in all the places
defenders,
too.
yeah, and defenders face a massive problem with this. Like as a defender, you have to pretty much patch everything. And like if you are a defender who has a product, well, now you are in a tough spot because now you have a lot of people finding the rules with AI, and you somehow have to patch them all. So like
Right.
it becomes like it's a cat and mouse game and mouse game, but in this case, cat wins,
Yeah.
right? Like cat is already like has a claw next to the mouse's neck, because like with the amount of vulnerabilities that are found and are publicly known to be found and thus reproducible with even simpler AIs by like high-level threat actors, it's becoming more and more risky waters for defenders. You have
Mhm.
like every single software company now has to have a airtight SDLC. There is no more, oh, we don't care about security because our product is not going to be used in such a way. Like this era is over. Like it's just done. There's no continuation for it. Like every single company needs to have like cybersecurity program de facto.
Right.
Like even if it is a water company. Like you know the famous joke like how water bottle producing company pivoted into AI and it was public news. Well, it's no longer a joke. Every single company now is a cybersecurity company
I had
because like
one more story transitioning into targeting edge devices with Brickstorm. Brickstorm's malware, we can start an ASA and or FTD devices. But you know, it's a Golang based malware, and so threat actors can have some flexibility as to which platforms they can deploy the malware to, which is actually a good design choice by threat actors. I hate to say, but they found this recently. Velexity published a post, and they were found threat actors deploying this to an Ignite storage sync appliance, and they had a dwell time of at least 18 months before detection. So I don't know how much that speaks to the stealthiness of Brickstorm or the lack of detection capabilities in the companies they compromised, or a combination of both. But Brickstorm is still alive and well, and increasing in the breadth and scope of devices that they're compromising. There was also a free BSD variant of Brickstorm that was found on a pfSense firewall, which was interesting as well. So it's not
oh
just Linux,
no.
now it runs on BSD. It's really kind of becoming the right once run anywhere of malware.
Yeah, that pretty much covers the gamut of underlying network devices, right? Linux and
Yeah.
FreeBSD are like the two.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is the two big boys. Let's put it
Yeah.
this way. Maybe you can find something else if you try really hard and struggle a lot. But like it's just bad.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing just to see Brickstorm being used in this way. And of course, you know, they pivoted into the Microsoft environment from it. Um, Use things like Python reverse shells, intended as a fallback should Brickstorm be removed. So this is a fairly complex and advanced campaign. Verdant Bamboo is I don't know if that's the name of the campaign. On Verdant Bamboo, also tracked as Warp Panda or UNC 5221. So that's the threat actor group. They're calling Verdant Bamboo, but I recognize it as UNC 5221, Chinese threat actor. That their TTPs in this campaign are pretty similar from the ones I've observed that more heavily use network edge appliances as the initial foothold. to then pivot into Microsoft Active Directory and deeper into the organization.
Actually, I cannot stress this enough. Don't trust your edge device. Like the era of like edge device being your firewall and it being reliable is more or less gone. You don't trust it with access to your Windows network. Like that biff idea to give it any kind of like Active Directory credentials. Like this area is just over, done.
Yeah.
There is no more to be expected from it, right?
Yeah,
And
you're
like
right. If users are authenticating to an edge device using Active Directory credentials, that is going to be a huge target for attackers. I don't care who the vendor is. I don't care what kind of device it is. If it's on the internet, because it has to be, right? So users can be anywhere on the internet, and they're authenticating to it, especially with Active Directory. That's a target for attackers because that's a huge foothold, an amazing foothold for a threat actor.
Yup. And like, how amazing? Yes. Like, there is just no other comment to be made. It's yes. It's amazingness of yes.
What we need is the tail scale style. I don't know what there's names for that. SD-WAN comes up in that conversation.
Mesh.
But there's mesh networking. Yeah.
Mesh.
And it's newer. I mean, it's not new, but it's newer technology, but it's more like a tail scale, right? Where it happens in reverse, right? You don't have to expose anything to the public internet. That authentication is done in a different way so that not everything has to be exposed to the internet. Like I don't have to expose any ports for Tailscale as an example.
Let's put it this way. If you don't have to expose any ports, somebody still has to. So now you're
Someone
relying on
has
some
to. You're
public
right.
cloud, which like if exploited, it exploits every Tailscale customer. So like it's not better. You can expose one VPN port. Nothing else must be exposed, and that VPN port must not be SSL VPN.
Yeah,
Like
SSL VPN needs to die.
VPN port,
I said that when it first came out, and it still
Uh-huh.
lived on, and now people are finally killing it.
Yeah, like the real point of this is that like SSL VPN has to die, and your exposed VPN needs to be either OpenVPN or WireGuard, or
Yep.
maybe if you float that way, IPsec, like
Yep.
some well-known protocol. Yes,
Yep.
there is a chance that will get broken as well. That happened, but the number of exploits in something like IKEv2 implementation or OpenVPN or WireGuard is much lower historically than what
Yeah.
we observed with SSL VPNs. And
Yeah,
like
they
this
still
will
have.
probably
They
be
still
the
happen.
safest
But
deployment you can have.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah, like it will be even safer than Tailscale, in my opinion. So
Cool.
because you don't rely on magic anymore.
It's a different kind of magic.
Yeah.
We need different magic.
Yeah.
Because the magic of your network edge appliances with SSL VPNs, everyone knows those magic tricks now.
Yep.
In fact, I want to say some network edge vendors have deprecated SSL VPNs in the client and on the server. They're moving away from it. I saw that in one vendor in particular. I don't know. I don't remember which one, so I don't want to call them on the show. But in my research, I did observe a vendor when I was looking at their versions and capabilities. The feature of SSL VPN is being phased out.
Yeah.
I mean,
which is good, but it also means you need to go update your appliances, and not just your appliances, but you need to update every VPN client that a user has. So if you've got 200,000 users with a VPN client, get ready to push out a software update to all 200,000 users.
Yup. And like this, you'll have to install it because otherwise, hello there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what was it? Last year we talked about, not last year, even just a couple episodes, we talked about cyber insurance companies that were like calling out, it's like, hey, if you have certain on-premises VPNs around, that is like 6xing your likelihood of getting ransomware based on their insurance claims. And in their website, they had, this was at Bay Cyber Insurance Company. I love to quote their reports. And on their website, they were basically like, if you have these characteristics, if you have this stuff in your environment, they have this, a service, essentially. It's like, we'll help you migrate off of this to make you insurable. Because if you have this stuff in your system, we cannot insure you, but we can help
Isn't
you
it?
get
Yeah.
off of it.
That's one of the most telling data points, Chase. Certainly.
Yeah,
Yep.
the cyber
So
insurance,
this is
there's
the
money on the line,
key.
man. They got, yeah.
And there's solutions out there to help you. I mean, I don't want to plug other vendors, but there's solutions to this problem. But again, ripping and replacing this infrastructure in your network, especially in larger networks, is not easy, and I get that. But
Yeah, it's not.
coming. It's coming. Got to do it. Awesome. Well, Chase and
Yes.
Vlad, thank you very much for appearing on this edition of Below the Surface. That'll conclude the show for today. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.
And thanks for hosting us, Paul.
Yeah.
Anytime.
This is always the greatest. Thanks, guys.